everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. I'm Carly Riley, and today on the show, I have Duncan and Griffin Cockfoster, the co-founders of Nifty Gateway. Their names are a handful, and I asked them about their last name because I had to. But they're the co-founders of Nifty Gateway, and Nifty Gateway is one of the first NFT marketplaces. It was founded 4 years ago. So Duncan and Griffin have been in the space for a very long time and have watched the evolution of the space. So we talk about Nifty Gateway's origins. We have some of that fun historical talk about what it was like back in the day. We break down what's failing about the traditional art market world and how NFTs and crypto art are a huge improvement and what we can expect there. And then really what I was most excited about was breaking down some of the new features that Nifty Gateway has launched as a part of their new non-custodial marketplace. Specifically, Duncan and Griffin have been touting the fact that Nifty Gateway's new marketplace will have 70% lower gas fees. And I really wanted to dive deep with them on how that works, down to the smart contract level. So this conversation does get a little bit technical. I'm not a dev. I'm not super technical. So if you're a technical person, you're probably like going to listen to this and laugh at me. But I think if you're on the cusp where you understand this technology, but you're not a dev, you don't play in smart contracts on a daily basis, I think you'll find this really valuable at sort of understanding it at a slightly deeper level. So recommend you check this out if you're here. It seems like you are. And just excited for you to hear this. I would love to have these guys back on. They've been around the block for a minute or more, so they're a valuable perspective to have. Before we dive in, we will have a word from our sponsors, and please enjoy my conversation with Duncan and Griffin Cockfoster.
Living a bankless life requires taking control over your own private keys. And that's why so many in the Bankless Nation already have their Ledger hardware wallet. And brand new to the Ledger lineup of hardware wallets is the Ledger Nano S Plus, a huge upgrade to the world's most popular hardware wallet. With more memory and a larger screen, the Nano S Plus makes it easy to navigate and verify your transactions. And the paired Ledger Live desktop app gives you increased transparency as to what is about to happen with your NFT. What you see is what you sign. The Nano S Plus gives you the smoothest possible user experience while you're doing all of your crypto things. So go to the Ledger website to check out the features of the new Ledger Nano S Plus and join the waitlist to get yours. And don't forget about the Crypto Life card, also powered by Ledger. The CL card is a crypto debit card that hooks right into the Ledger Live app, right next to all the DeFi apps and services that you're already used to doing, like swapping tokens and staking. So if you don't have a Ledger hardware wallet, go to ledger.com, grab a Ledger, and take control over your crypto. It's increasingly obvious that everything will become tokenized, and NFT Marketplaces needs robust financial reporting, performance analysis, and the peace of mind that they are compliance ready. Gilded's NFT Ops is a one-stop financial reporting solution for growing NFT platforms. Gilded has developed marketplace-specific modules to track the financial performance of NFT creators, including revenue tracking, collection metrics, royalty payments, and revenue share. Customers of NFT Ops gain full access to accounting tools and powerful APIs for custom integrations that simplify operations, streamline reporting, and produce tax-ready data. So no wonder why so many top brands like CoinMarketCap, Gitcoin, Nifty's, and POAP trust Gilded to automate complex reporting workflows. Visit gilded.finance/bankless to learn more.
Duncan, Griffin, thank you both so much for joining. Really grateful to have you both here.
Thanks, Carly. Thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Carly.
Okay, we are going to talk about all the exciting new upcoming things on the docket here at Nifty, but I want to at Nifty Gateway. I'm not here, but I want to start with sort of the background, give people some context for Nifty Gateway. You guys are super OGs in the space, so I also just want to pick your brain generally and extract all sorts of wisdom from it. I want to start with this, which is my understanding is Nifty Gateway launched 3.5 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So CryptoKitties had its own marketplace. CryptoPunks had its own marketplace. What were you selling on Nifty Gateway 3.5 years ago?
Not a lot of people know this, but what Nifty Gateway started as was just a tool that let people buy NFTs with a credit card. It was sort of kind of similar to what MoonPay is now, actually. So it's sort of a plug and play purchasing solution. It was live on the CryptoKitties website. So there was a button where you saw a CryptoKitty you wanted, you could hit buy with Nifty Gateway, and then you just plugged in your credit card. And yeah, that was the first thing that we started with, just as a simple solution to onboard people into NFTs.
So was it more of an API in that sense than like its own landing page, or you just got like redirected to Nifty from like the CryptoKitties site?
It was basically like an Affirm tool or like a PayPal, where when you were on the checkout page, there was just a button that said buy with Nifty Gateway. And yeah, we actually worked with a lot of the early prominent NFT projects. We partnered with Axie Infinity on their land sale, which was awesome. I mean, that's an amazing team that went on to have like a huge amount of success. And then we did a lot of stuff with Gods Unchained too. So yeah, but definitely the NFT space was way different back then. And you're right there. I mean, that's part of the reason that we decided to pivot to a marketplace instead. There were only about 9 or 10 projects that really needed, uh, a credit card purchasing solution. So we just didn't think it would be a very big business.
Griffin, when did you guys decide to make that move to a marketplace?
So the story of Nifty Gateway is actually kind of hilarious, and it involves a lot of twins because we launched the credit card purchase. Yeah, it's very twin centric as it would turn out. We launched the credit card purchasing product, and we got our first seed investment from Adam Draper. We were part of the Boost VC Accelerator, which was great. And we finished the accelerator. We got introduced to the Winklevoss twins, and we all thought it would be pretty great to try working together. So they actually acquired the company. They acquired Nifty Gateway about 7 months into the history of Nifty Gateway. And after we were acquired by Gemini, we kind of sat around and asked, what is it the NFT space is really missing? And back then it was very small. The NFT space was tiny. Like, it was a tiny fraction of what it is today. And we thought accessibility was one of the biggest problems remaining to be solved. Like, we really wanted to make it easy for anyone to launch an NFT or to buy an NFT. And that's kind of how we launched the marketplace that Nifty Gateway is today.
It's funny because it feels to me like you've had this weird progression of there was you had Top Shot, which was later than you guys, but early in the scheme of this whole thing, that both allowed for credit card payments. And so you almost had this like super early day thing where people could pay via credit card. And then you've had this middle wave where that isn't the case. And it's a lot more like kind of tech centric, hard UX. You got to get your MetaMask, et cetera. Do you find that progression funny in that it almost feels like a degression, you could argue?
I actually think it makes perfect sense for the following reason. It definitely does appear a little funny, but what we've observed is that people get onboarded into NFTs with a credit card. Maybe like they hear about NFTs and they want to try it, but they're too lazy to set up a MetaMask. And that's sort of like the beginning of the learning curve. But then they progress and they get further along the learning curve. And once they're at the end of the learning curve with their own wallet and MetaMask, then all of a sudden that becomes honestly a pretty good user experience. There's a lot of things that are great about an all MetaMask UX. For example, the fact that sales instantly settle right to your wallet. Like, as soon as you make a sale, the ETH just gets sent right to your wallet. That's a pretty awesome UX. I mean, one of the hardest parts of a fiat marketplace is cashing people out, and there's almost no fiat marketplace that has instant settlements. I mean, this was something that people definitely got upset at Nifty Gateway about it, and Top Shot I think was even worse, where back in last year it sometimes took up to like 6 weeks for people to just cash their money out of Top Shot. So I kind of think it makes sense. It's a tough onboarding experience at first, and it's really important to have that credit card onboarding where people can just get started. But then once they learn what they're doing and once they have a wallet, there's a lot of parts of the wallet user experience that make a lot of sense.
So you get bought by Gemini and the Winklevoss twins. You said 7 months into the company's existence. Would that have been 2019 then, or were you still in 2018, 2019?
It was 2018. The acquisition closed in June of 2018, but it wasn't publicly announced for like 6 months after that. We kind of kept it secret. But yes, coming up on 3 years ago.
And the insight you guys land on is we need this easy on-ramp. That's credit cards. Were you also at that point, what did you think the NFT market was going to be at that point? Was it just digital art in your heads, or what was your interpretation of what this industry would be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the other big insight at the time was it was kind of twofold. We really thought that the NFT space would go towards a model where more well-known people were creating NFTs, and that would be how it grows. You get people with large audiences, be they artists, be they musicians, to create NFTs, and that drives awareness. And so it was about the accessibility, but it was also about, we said, okay, we're going to make a really strong push to get high quality people making NFTs and get people who are well known outside of just, outside of the crypto scene to create NFTs. So that was the other thing that we spent a lot of our energy on. And yeah, I mean, we always thought that NFTs would go from art to other things at some point. But I guess honestly, I mean, I thought that we didn't think that the market would cycle as quickly as it has. It's kind of mind bending to be a builder in the NFT space, because every 6 months you look up and the paradigm has totally shifted. And, so we said, okay, we're going to really focus on art at the beginning. And I think that was the right decision, because, a lot of those art releases really helps NFTs break through to the mainstream. I still think the Beeple sale at Christie's was, I mean, there was a lot that went up to that moment, but I feel like that was the moment where where the world went totally crazy. And from then, I feel like it's just been a constant cycle of more attention, more users, more growth, pretty steadily.
And Beeple had been releasing art on Nifty Gateway prior to the Christie's auction. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Was that where he got his start with NFTs, Beeple?
So yeah, up until that point, Beeple, we had done 2 different drops with him. And yeah, he was honestly a pretty good example of, I think, an artist who, he was a person where we really thought it would be super impactful for the space if people made NFTs. I don't think we quite anticipated that he would become, the huge name that he became. I think even he was a little bit surprised at how quickly that happened. I mean, he works incredibly hard and he earned it, but I think it just happened so fast. But yeah, the first 2 drops we did with him were nuts. The second drop, I think, was actually particularly memorable, because the first drop, he sold a few $100,000 worth, which was a big drop at the time, but other people had higher sales amount. And then the second drop, I think it was a weekend long auction that went for 2.3 million or 2.5 million. And that number really got people to wake up and pay attention. And that's a serious life-changing amount of money. For the first time, people were like, hold on, I can make that much money selling these NFT things. I should probably learn what an NFT is. And yeah, that really kicked off just an epic wave of adoption.
Griffin, did y'all approach Beeple? Did Beeple approach you? How did your 2 parties come together?
We approached Beeple. We actually spent a huge amount of time in the early days reaching out to artists. That's most of what we did, actually, right after we were acquired. And we brought on Tommy Kimmelman, who's now a legend on crypto Twitter and an awesome employee at Nifty Gateway. But originally his job was just to reach out to people, artists, sports teams, whoever, and try to convince them to launch NFTs. And as a part of that, we reached out to a huge number of people, and Beeple was one of them. And like Duncan said, when we got him on board, we were really excited, and we thought he would do well. And he's just kind of one of the stars that has completely taken off in the crypto movement.
Hearing you talk about all the outreach you were doing in the early days reminds me of a story Fuocious actually, I think, said to me, or maybe it was he said it in another podcast that I listened to in preparing to interview him, but that he started releasing his work on Nifty Gateway, and he was just sort of doing it alone and in isolation. And then I think it was actually somebody from the Nifty Gateway team that reached out to him and was like, hey, you should actually put something up for sale. Like, he was just kind of putting art up, but not actually listing it for anything. Do you feel like that hand-to-hand combat, that hustle there, is that sort of been the key to y'all succeeding the way you have?
I think that's a major part of it. This was another really big thing that we did that was slightly different early on. Back when we first started, the most common way to release art, and all the other art platforms were essentially open minting platforms, similar to what they are now. They haven't changed their models very much. But on Super Rare, for example, you got admitted to Super Rare, and then you could mint your artwork anytime you wanted, and it would just sort of go up as this listing, and you would wait for the bids to come in, and eventually, if you got a bid that you liked enough, you would accept it. And we thought about it. We decided to try something different. Really, it was honestly inspired by the streetwear world. Another very modern aspect of culture, how they would release everything all at once in a drop. And the drop itself is fantastic marketing. You're creating this event-based hype that brings a lot of people and brings a lot of eyeballs. So we said, okay, we should try doing these. We should try releasing NFTs as a drop and kind of see where that gets us. And it ended up being an extremely popular format. I think drops have gone on to be really, really successful. But yeah, it really was. I mean, at the time, like no one was really releasing NFTs and drops. You would just sort of mint them. And then yeah, the other thing is, I mean, we have an awesome creative team now whose job basically it is all they do is work with artists. So they hold your hand, they help you figure out, hey, here's how I'm going to approach the NFT space. Here's what I can do to make this drop really, really exciting. Here's how I can do something, a really interesting mechanism. We do a lot of custom work around the drops to make them extra special. Like the last drop we did with Ferocious, we had the paint leaderboard and all these extra mechanisms. And so, yeah, I think the producers are a critical part of Nifty Gateway that have been there since the beginning, and they work so closely with artists, and they have a really strong bond and a really strong relationship. I don't think the platform would be even close to what it is without them. So shout out the Nifty Gateway producer team.
Griffin, were you guys like art enthusiasts at all growing up? Did you have any interest in art, or was this something that was born out of your interest in tech and in the blockchain?
It was born out of our interest in tech and the blockchain, right? Which I think is not that uncommon. A lot of entrepreneurs come at problems sideways, and I think that new perspective can help a lot. Like Elon Musk actually wasn't really into rocketry before he started SpaceX, where it was kind of an evolving interest. It's the same for us. I think a lot of the naivete about how art worked and the willingness to question assumptions and build something totally new has helped us in the NFT space. And I think you've seen that a lot. A lot of the most successful NFT people didn't have gallery backgrounds or didn't have fine art degrees. I mean, some of them did, but what's really cool about the NFT space is how much it's been willing to question the way the fine art world works. Because the way the fine art world works is it really holds a lot of people back, and it's very legacy driven, and everybody assumes things have to be done a certain way just because they've always been done that way. And that's what I've liked about NFTs, is that people are much more open-minded.
I want to ask you guys a little bit about how that legacy art world works, but I do want to stay on this thread and say, Duncan, y'all have become art curators and from the early days have been selecting who goes on your platform. How did you guys feel stepping into that role? How do you feel qualified to step into that role? How are you making determinations about, who to let on the platform?
Well, I mean, honestly, as I would say that it wasn't, as Griffin mentioned, we didn't explicitly set out to say like, okay, we're going to be art curators. We didn't really come from a curational background. And I think that has benefits as well as downsides. It does mean you can question the way things are done. I think it's kind of a weird role to be in. I mean, we're not personally curating, we're not personally hand selecting every artist. We have a lot of people who work on that at Nifty Gateway now. And actually the head of curation at Nifty Gateway was an artist on the platform before he became the head of curation, which I think helps a lot. I mean, he has a ton of empathy. He really understands what it's like to be an artist. He takes the role very seriously. But yeah, I think it is a little bit of a funny situation to find ourselves in. And honestly, it's amazing. It's really an honor. Working with artists is a very fun job. It's like a lot of other industries like are just not nearly as fun or interesting as working in art is. That's what I found. So I feel very lucky.
Are y'all open about what your criteria are for making it onto the platform as an artist? And maybe Griffin, if you want to take this one, we'll go back and forth.
Yeah, there aren't strict criteria for making it on the platform as an artist. We have a team of curators, and it really is a group decision. And it's driven by our head of curation, Havo, who is really talented and has a lot of empathy and understanding for what makes good art. We try and work with a diverse group of people from a lot of different backgrounds. One thing we try and do a lot is partner with artists, and if they have crazy ideas around custom smart contracts or something like that, that's a program we're building more and more, where we'll just partner with an artist, and we have the smart contract engineers, we have the technical expertise to make crazy stuff happen. And a lot of artists have crazy ideas, but they don't have a team on hand to build it. So, in that sense, we work with them. I think what we did with POC and the merge drop is a really good example there, as well as Ferocious and the paint drop. And Yeah, we don't have specific criteria. It's more of a team-based and consensus-based approach. And, it's definitely not perfect. There's a lot of great artists who haven't dropped on Nifty Gateway, and it doesn't mean they're not great artists. It really just means that we can't cover the entire ecosystem.
Duncan, what are y'all and then crypto art, the NFT world in general, fixing about the broken traditional art system?
The physical art world, or the fiat art world, as I sometimes like to call it, um, it's actually it's not something I really understood well before Nifty Gateway, and it's something that I've learned a lot about, and it really has a lot of nuance and complexity. Um, I think the biggest issue with it is that it's very static. It almost feels like molasses, and it's really the thing that it's not very good at is it's not very good at helping artists get discovered and helping their work be distributed widely quickly. Um, the model for being a successful physical artist is you move to New York, you spend a long time networking until you finally meet the right gallery owners. They agree to do a show with you, and you're one of the lucky few who's made it. In NFTs, it's the model is like you open up social media, you tweet out your work, your collectors find you, you open up a Discord for them. So it's really a much more open, engaging format. And I think, NFTs are still very new, but the amount of money that's being paid out to artists and creators via NFTs is already in the same ballpark as the amount of money being paid out to artists in sort of other creative domains. I honestly like to compare it to TikTok versus Hollywood, where the strategy to being a movie star or being a celebrity used to be you go to Hollywood and you get a role in a TV show, and now all you have to do is if you're funny enough on YouTube, if you're funny enough on TikTok, that's how you become famous, and that's how you become a celebrity. It's kind of the same thing for an NFT artist versus a physical artist, where if you're it's a much more open and egalitarian system, in my opinion. Um, and then there's a lot of other really, I think the biggest thing that in my opinion that the physical art world gets wrong is the opacity. It's so opaque. You can't figure out how much art sold for, just period. It's so difficult to get that information. And I think the reason that they set it up that way is in their opinion, it actually helps prices rise and it helps the artists like earn more money. But I actually think what we've seen with NFTs is if you create this really open and transparent system, then all of a sudden it becomes a more investable thing because people know what their investment is actually worth. They feel more comfortable spending more money on it. So if they kind of went the exact opposite direction and went fully transparent, I actually think the amount of money that people spend on physical art would go up. So I kind of think that's the biggest thing that people miss.
There's so much there that I want to comment on. I think totally one of my questions is, do you think that are we in a Renaissance era for art collection? Like I've spent my life thinking about like people who have art as like old people,
Right.
and upper middle class to upper class people who have the kind of disposable income that make them want to whatever on their art. Do you think that will fundamentally change for the long term with our generation?
I do think so. Yeah. I think there's a really strong possibility that that happens. I mean, this is a really interesting point that someone made to me once. Basquiat, his paintings sell for $100 million on the secondary market, but you look at who's had a bigger cultural impact on the world? Is it Basquiat or is it Taylor Swift? Like Taylor Swift is just a much more of a household
speaking
name.
my language.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Big T Swift girl.
Taylor Swift, has this legion of devoted fans, whereas fine art is still it's a pretty niche activity. And I think a lot of what makes it niche is honestly the opacity, the fact that it's financially inaccessible for so many people. Um, and then just like the logistical difficulties play a huge role too, where, like storing, owning, caring for a piece of art. So I think NFTs really have the potential to transform art into like truly a mainstream cultural phenomenon, which it has been at times in the past. In the Renaissance, it was one of the most mainstream. But yeah, I think NFTs have the potential to bring that back. I certainly hope so.
What's also so interesting, where my head went as you were talking, is part of it too is music is this immersive experience. You listen to it, it invokes a lot there. And I recently interviewed Danny Cole, who's the artist behind Creature World. And he's been pushing boundaries in different ways about how can art itself now become an immersive experience through NFTs, where the art piece itself changes with your experience, or you are kind of co-creating the art piece with the original artist, and therefore it's becoming more immersive the way music is. And that's just something you can't get in the traditional or physical art world. Something that blew my mind, and it's on this point of opacity that you made, that as I've tried to learn a little bit more about the traditional art world, is you can't necessarily, in all cases, just go into an art gallery, ask the price of a piece that's for sale, and then buy it. They will actually vet you as a collector out. And even if you have the $300,000 or $1 million or whatever they're asking for this piece of art, they can refuse to sell it to you. Griffin, is that true? Do you have any more insight into that or thoughts on that dynamic?
It is true. Yeah. I actually have a friend who works at a very high-end art gallery, and they wouldn't even tell her the prices. She asked about some of the prices of paintings, and she's an employee, and they stubbornly refused to give her a price on a single thing that was being sold at Art Basel. It's absurd. I mean, to people who work in NFTs, it's crazy to think about that.
No, I think that the other thing I want to mention about that dynamic is in the physical art world, you essentially cede control of who your work gets sold to the gallery, where they have 100% control over that. And that's where that dynamic comes from. The gallery basically becomes the gatekeeper, and they decide who the right collectors are. It could just be their friends. You never really know, which is such a crazy dynamic compared to NFTs. And as I said, I think I understand why they went that path. It makes sense, but I think it's kind of they're thinking small about it a little bit. And if you make the whole system transparent instead, then you open it up to a lot more people, and you make it much easier. People are actually willing to invest more money if you have a transparent system versus if you have an opaque one.
And it's what enables the royalties for the artists. So,
Totally.
You were saying the traditional art market keeps it opaque in some way to benefit the artist, or they can get a higher price for the artist if it's that way. But the reality is all that is slammed through with NFTs and the royalty system. Of course, this actually segues us nicely, because the royalties right now are rarely a smart contract feature and primarily a marketplace feature. And so it speaks to the importance of marketplaces like y'all. You have launched some big changes and made some big announcements recently, and I think you may even have some more coming up. The big top line here is a migration from a custodial platform to, I think, a hybrid model where you'll have both the custodial and non-custodial piece. Did I get that right? Duncan, do you want to say your piece on what's happening there?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Up until, really this week, the only way that you could buy and sell stuff on Nifty Gateway was if you deposited it into a custody wallet that we controlled. So kind of similar. It was really intentionally modeled after the way that Gemini and Coinbase work. And I think it's very valuable for bringing new people into the space. We've seen this borne out in the data repeatedly, where there's a lot of people who want to buy NFTs, but the friction of setting up a wallet is just too much, and they end up not buying because of that friction. So the custody makes it really, really easy for people to get started. But then, once they're started, once they know what they're doing, then they open their own wallet and they want to trade stuff directly from wallet to wallet. So we're really excited to have both of those things under one platform. We think combining the two of them and being a platform that can service every level of the user journey is really going to open up NFTs to a lot more people, and hopefully make the market a lot more liquid as well. So yeah, it's a big feature we've been working on for a long time.
NFT marketplaces, and I think specifically these non-custodial compatible marketplaces, right? Your OpenSeas and your what looks rare, and get a lot of flack. It feels like it's been hard for folks to get it just right. What are some of the improvements or features, Griffin, that y'all are excited about? Why can you nail this?
Yeah, so the non-custodial NFT marketplace that we're launching, we didn't just set out to go and imitate the architecture of everything else that was out there. We started working on this almost a year ago, and we really sat down and said, how can we build a next generation marketplace that's, a step function improvement from what exists currently, and how can we build like the next generation marketplace? It's this cliche to say that we're still early in NFTs, and it's hilarious. I joke, but I love it when people say that, but we really are very early in the tech, and there's so much room for improvement on the technology of blockchain. And I think there will be many more paradigm shifts we go through before it settles into its final state. Really similar to the internet. If you look at the 90s and the early 2000s, there were so many paradigm shifts. There were so many companies that were enormous and then just got blown out of the water because there was some huge breakthrough in the tech. And I think we're still very early in the days of blockchain. So what we set out to build here was the next generation NFT marketplace. At a high level, the initial benefits of what that means is that it has 70% lower gas fees than other marketplaces, which is an enormous breakthrough that it took us months of tinkering to get right. It also means you don't have to pay any gas to cancel listings, which is an incredible optimization. Paying gas to cancel listings is a terrible UX. So often you're trying to cancel a listing and then it gets sniped because you can't call the transaction in time. And it also means we can do other really cool things such as marketplace project-specific discounts and user-specific discounts. So we can take a project, and we're doing this with a lot of our launch partners, and they're all getting 0 fees for the month of April, which is a really cool thing. We have that sort of customizability and flexibility. And that's really just V1 of what we're launching. It's really built on a new technological paradigm. So we have a lot of other features that we're planning that we're super excited about. One of them, for example, we're calling it free shipping. It's where you'll be able to put an item up for sale, but you as the seller offer to pay the gas fees on behalf of the buyer. So it would be a 0 gas purchase for the buyer, which is really, really cool. And yeah, it's just the beginning. I think once users use it, they'll realize it's much more advanced, much smoother, much better UX, and it really is just meant to be an evolution of what NFT marketplaces can be.
If you're starting on your NFT journey, you need MetaMask. This is your tool to unlock the world of DeFi and NFTs without giving up custody over your private keys. MetaMask is both a secure in-browser wallet and also a secure bridge for your hardware wallet so that you can connect to any Web3 enabled website. You can now trade tokens with any DEX or aggregator. MetaMask Swap gathers real-time pricing information across the DeFi exchange ecosystem, allowing you to select your best price while getting all of the MetaMask benefits of self-custody, lower gas costs, and increased transaction success rates. MetaMask also has a fantastic mobile wallet, which I use while I'm out and about. And I use it to collect POAPs, NFTs, and use it for all my DeFi things while I'm away from home. If you haven't downloaded MetaMask, you gotta try it out. Download MetaMask for desktop and mobile at metamask.io, or load up your Ledger, Trezor, Keystone, or Lattice hardware wallets so that they too can get into Web3. Rarible is the NFT platform that's leading the charge into the multi-chain universe ahead of us. Available on Flow, Tezos, Polygon, and of course Ethereum, Rarible is the perfect place for NFT newcomers, profile picture collectors, and experienced NFT traders. Rarible has a variety of NFT features that set it apart from other NFT marketplaces. They have a native messaging function allowing you to DM your friends or haggle with sellers. They also have a mobile app on iOS and Android with a built-in NFT portfolio tracker tool, so you can easily check the value of your digital art portfolio. Rarible is built on the Rarible protocol, a multi-purpose, open source, and community-governed NFT protocol that helps build products and services across the NFT ecosystem, including white label marketplaces tailored to specific NFT communities. So go to Rarible.com and start discovering and trading NFTs, putting in floor bids to join PFP communities, and DM with some brand new internet friends.
So I think the top line there, the grabby bit, is this 70% lower gas fees. And I actually want to get technical here. Can you walk me through how this has worked previously and what you're changing and optimizing for that allows for the 70% lower gas fees? Maybe Duncan, let's throw it to you.
Definitely. So the key difference, as Griffin mentioned, we really have the benefit of hindsight, and we've been able to see how all the other marketplaces are built, and think about what they do well and think about what they do poorly. So to break it down a little bit, making an NFT purchase really requires 3 fundamental steps. First, someone has to create an order. An order is a piece of information that says I want to buy an NFT or I want to sell an NFT. So if you list an NFT for sale, you're making a sell order. And then once someone else says, I want to complete the order, then you have to do a process of order validation, which means making sure that the order is correct, making sure that the buyer has paid the right amount of money, etc. And then once the order is validated to be correct, you have to do the third step, which is order settlement, which essentially means completing the transaction, sending the NFT from the seller to the buyer, sending the money from the buyer to the seller. And the way that NFT marketplaces have evolved is basically they have the first step off chain. So when you list something for sale, you create an order that gets stored in a database, and like nowhere on the blockchain. But then they have steps 2 and 3 happen on chain. And we looked at that and we basically said, okay, because step 1 is already happening off chain, there's not really any extra benefit to having step 2 happen on chain. And in fact, there's a pretty high cost. Users have to pay a lot of gas for this order validation to happen. So we made the decision to basically build a marketplace where step 2 happens off chain as well as step 1. The only step that happens on chain is the crucial step, the order settlement. And that's essentially what leads to the much lower gas fees. And it's also what powers all the other innovations that Griffin talked about. I hope that was a good explanation.
Yeah,
it wasn't
that's
too technical.
Great. No, and I'm actually, I think, I don't know if you can say what I'm about to do is going to get more technical, but I'm going to, I think, spell it out even further, and you can tell me if I'm right, which is, what I hear you saying is, when we talk about on-chain and off-chain, I think that's a familiar concept to many folks at this point, though still not to everyone, when it comes to art. A lot of people, I think, are aware that their art, the image itself is typically stored on IPFS or, worst case, maybe an AWS or somewhere else. And then within the smart contract itself, you have a pointer that says, hey, look in that location where that IPFS thing is, that's where your art is. But when we're talking about it in terms of like these functions, what I hear you describing is currently, right now, that order validation stage, it's just an algorithm or like a line of code that does that validation. And that line of code right now is in the smart contract itself. And it sounds like what you're saying is you're basically taking that function that gets called is not in the smart contract itself. And the information that comes out of it is stored in a decentralized place, like an IPFS or some sort of database. And now the only function, so to speak, that remains in that smart contract, and therefore the data is stored in that stored on chain, is that order settlement layer. Is that, like, literally, if I was reading the code, that's what you're saying would mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Honestly, you should be the one explaining it, because that was great.
No.
Yeah, the other really cool.
It's the beauty of being stupid and not a dev is if you get it right, it's gonna be simple because you can't understand it any other way.
The other really cool thing about this too is that if your orders are validated on chain, then you're kind of restricted to the context of the blockchain where the NFTs live. And with our system, we can actually create orders that work in multiple different contexts, which I think will be really powerful. Essentially what that means is, like, let's say you have an NFT that lives on Polygon. You could create a listing on Nifty Gateway and say, I'll sell this Polygon NFT for 1 ETH, but I'm only going to accept a mainnet ETH payment. And then someone else could go with their ETH wallet and say, like, oh, I'm going to buy this NFT. Even though it lives on Polygon, I'm going to pay on a different blockchain, but the order will settle. So basically, like, the payment will happen on one blockchain, but the order will settle on a different blockchain, without having to use a bridge, without having to, like, transition assets between one blockchain to the other.
And that's because that second layer, that validation, that is the validation layer, the payment layer?
It is, yeah.
You could call it. So that validation layer is chain agnostic because it's not on a chain at all. And because it's chain agnostic, it's that flexibility. Wow, that's really interesting. I'm still trying to process, like, practically speaking, and you gave the example, but it's just taking my brain a beat to catch up to what that means. If I'm looking at, like, a Polygon NFT on Nifty Gateway,
I think here's what we hope. Like, ETH is the most liquid currency to trade NFTs in by far. Like, most of them are priced in ETH. And you can wrap ETH and move it to another network and say, like, hey, I want to use wrapped ETH on this other network. But there's far less wrapped ETH on on Polygon than there is ETH on mainnet. So we basically think it'll increase the liquidity for the NFT market a lot, because everything will be purchasable in ETH, which is the currency that most people have, essentially, that on a high level. But I should also mention, I mean, we're selling the future state here. That is not launching this week. That'll launch when it launches, we can see what the impact really is.
So that's crazy though. So what you're describing is I could go onto Nifty Gateway. There could be a Polygon NFT that I could pay for with ETH, but the settlement would live on Polygon, which of course ultimately, whatever that gets into sidechain roll-ups, whatever. But okay, that's really, really interesting.
What's really cool to think about is in a future state, you could buy Solana NFTs with Ethereum, or Tezos NFTs with Ethereum, or Ethereum NFTs with Solana. Like connect your Phantom wallet, pay with Solana, and then receive an NFT to your Ethereum wallet once the transaction completes. Like it's a very cool cross-chain environment that we're trying to build to. And this is the first step to get there. It's the foundational infrastructure. And the first main advantage is, of course, 70% lower gas fees and no fees to cancel listings, which we still think are amazing features on their own.
This is so cool because at a high level, I've said this to people, like obviously we're going to live in a multi-chain world, and the end state of all of this is we're all going to interact with the blockchain all the time, and we're going to have no idea what blockchain we're interacting with, and it's all going to be, very much just under the surface stuff that's happening. And this is like my first, like, now I'm like living through it. I'm like, oh my God, I'm kind of watching that play out, and this sort of hypothetical future state feels like it's coming together, which is very cool.
Yeah, it's we're really excited about it as well. And it's really cool to build something like that. I mean, it's honestly one of the really fun parts about building in crypto. It's like we're figuring this out as we go along. 2 years ago, there wasn't really a need for any sort of multi-chain product, because there was only, Ethereum was the only blockchain that had any sort of real adoption. But now there is.
And does this mean you can leverage the low gas fees of other chains while leveraging the liquidity of ETH? Is that a way to put the huge advantage here? Not to harp on this point for too long, but.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, that's a pretty good summary. You still have to, actions will still have to happen on ETH, and like depending on how complicated they are, the gas fees might be pretty high. But if you're just doing a payment on ETH, like that's generally pretty cheap. It's usually only like $2 in gas fees right now. So
let's talk about the other trade-offs here. And Griffin, maybe I'll throw this to you because, okay, we'll talk more about some of the other features and the benefits that we've just outlined, which are tremendous. But obviously there's a cost to everything, and you've now taken another step off chain, which, maxis maybe or won't love. So Griffin, can you maybe elucidate like what the trade-offs on the other end of this are?
Yeah, definitely. With any decision you make, there's always going to be trade-offs. The way we see it, we eventually want to move towards a fully trustless future where orders are stored on chain, they're fully permissionless, maybe they're cross-chain in some way. I'm not exactly sure what that would look like, and that certainly I think is the end goal of Nifty Gateway, and I feel like that's the end goal of everyone in crypto. The way we see the downsides here are that as soon as orders actually moved off chain, which happened a few years ago, because creating an order fully on chain on Ethereum right now would just be really expensive. It would, and you have to pay gas every time you put something up for sale, and I don't think people would want to do that. We've moved away from an environment where everything lives on chain. So since that first step is already off chain, taking the second step off chain as well is basically equivalent in terms of decentralization. So the way we see it, there's limited drawbacks in that respect. However, I do think, more decentralization is probably a purely good thing. And the question is, how can we build towards a fully trustless future? And that remains very important. And I don't think this is really a step backwards, but it's not a step towards that either. So that's just something we think about. I don't know. Is there anything you'd add to that, Duncan?
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good summary. Essentially, our thesis is, because this first step is already happening off chain, it doesn't actually make that much of an impact if you move the second step off chain, and it actually unlocks a lot of behavior as well. And yeah, I also say we're constantly open to feedback and revisions. We think that there are definitely ways that we could move this to essentially where it doesn't happen on Ethereum, but it does happen on some other type of blockchain. And like, then you could maybe even have a world where like the orders and the validation both happen on chain, which we think would have some benefits. I mean, this is V1 of what we're building, but there is a bigger picture where that might be possible.
So let me ask you that. I understand that this kind of marginal step of taking the step 2 off chain, it doesn't feel like a big difference. But what are some of the drawbacks to having 1 and 2 off chain in the way that we currently have it? You know, I think we had talked about composability at one point, being something gets lost, and maybe expand a little bit on that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, DeFi is always an interesting comparison here where, like a lot of DeFi doesn't even work off order books, and composability is so important in DeFi where like you can take out a loan, do something with the money, and then repay that loan in the same transaction. If you had a fully on-chain order book with NFTs, I mean, the first big advantage would be it's much easier for anyone to scrape and locate that order book. I mean, you can ask the people who have worked with the OpenSea API and are trying to scrape orders from it. It can be really, really finicky and really hard to make it work. And they're an extremely talented team. If all the orders are on chain, then looking up the orders just becomes a much simpler technical task where you just have to look at every block and see the orders come in. And then so that would really help with stuff like, propagating listing information, making it really easy for people to see like what's being listed right now. And then it would be kind of interesting to think about like fully composable NFT applications where you could buy something for sale, list it, and then buy it again in the same transaction. I think people really haven't explored what like truly composable NFT applications could do. And I think the fact that we moved to this world where orders are stored off chain for the most part is a big part of that. So yeah, I think honestly, my prediction is that we'll see what happens with DeFi, and then people will come up with ideas from DeFi and eventually port them over to NFTs. That's usually how innovation has gone.
Okay, I have 2 follow-ups to this.
Hit me.
So the first is on this querying order book data. On the DeFi side is part of this like, or it may not even just apply to DeFi, but I think about like institutions, and as institutions who are starting to get into trading crypto and like settling orders and the regulatory lift that they have to comply with, and trying to like match order settlement. Like is that part of this where their jobs become more complicated with an absence of step 1 and 2 on chain?
That's a good question. That's not really something that I don't really know about the regulatory requirements for institutions. But
Okay, no, I ask this again. It's so naive. I have a friend who works for a like a hedge fund basically, but it's like a crypto specific hedge fund, and she just like all day long is just trying to like reconcile trades according to like regulate, and it's like a nightmare because of all the different trades and chains they're trading on and this and that. Okay, we're gonna skip that. Composability. I feel like my journey in crypto is just me getting closer to really understanding what the heck composability means. And every time I like understand one part of it, there like are new facets of what composability actually means that I feel like emerge. So starting to grasp it again, thinking about like art, on-chain art. I've had conversations with people about like a cyber brokers or Avastars and these projects for whom the on-chain art piece was really important, and understood where maybe composability comes in there. Like you can actually change features of the artwork on chain, and that's all tracked, and that's really interesting, whatever. Can you speak a little bit further about what some of these other composability unlocks might be in more specific terms?
yeah, okay. I actually have a great example for this.
Yes.
And I feel like, I don't know, for some reason, all my composability examples end up being like hacks or malicious, but it does demonstrate the technology well. Okay, so basically, there's there's fractionalization apps where you can take your NFT and split it up into a ERC20 token, and then whoever owns 100% of that ERC20 token can redeem it with the smart contract to get the NFT. And then so those apps exist, and that's fully composable. And then remember when Bored Apes released their ape token a few weeks ago?
Oh yeah.
Was it a month ago? Yeah. Okay, so
No, there's no way. Was it a month ago?
I don't remember. My perception of time is totally
nothing.
distorted.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically what someone
probably
did
right.
as soon as that token dropped, what someone did is they took out a flash loan. They bought up the existing supply of a fractionalized Bored Ape. They redeemed the Bored Ape, and then they used that redeem ape to claim the ape coin. and then they sent the Bored Ape back. So they got the fractionalization back, and then used those fractionalized shares to pay back the flash loan, all in a single transaction. So essentially, they didn't spend any money. This all happened in one single transaction, which is why composability was so key. But they were able to claim like $1 million worth of ape token, and they did this on every single ape that was fractionalized. They did this on.
So was it essentially like an arbitrage opportunity between the price of the fractional prices of the apes and the ape coin?
Well, it was an arbitrage opportunity that had nothing to do with the fractional price of the ape. But because all these applications are composable, you could just take out a loan for as much money as you want, use that to buy the fractional shares of the ape, redeem the ape coin, and then you repay the loan all in the same block. And because everything is composable, because everything could happen in the same block, then that's what made this work, essentially.
Just composable, it just means like being able to mess with shit on chain. Like, is that a colloquial way to put it?
I mean, yeah, that's a pretty good description. It really just means like two applications can talk to each other directly inside the blockchain. Like they don't have to go outside the smart blockchain.
Contract.
Yeah, inside the smart contract. Like they don't have to go get any information from outside the smart contract. Yeah.
What Duncan is talking about with composability is very interesting, and like it really goes to the power of blockchain itself, right? Like if all the orders were on chain, it means that anyone could access every order that existed for a given NFT. And like we all have the same data. We all have perfect data. And it's kind of like the way Bitcoin being permissionless was so powerful. Like it meant anyone can access the Bitcoin protocol from around the world at any time. And the powerful, like the power of permissionlessness is what composability is all about. It means that like once you build something, anyone else can build on top of it, and no one can stop them from building on top of it. And because so many people build on top of what other people have built on top of, it just really compounds into something very, very powerful. And it's a lot of the reason that blockchain has been so powerful, I think.
And when we say build on top of, because this is, again, I think where for some reason my desire is to like understand it at the smart contract level, despite not being a dev. By build on top of it, we mean build something that can directly talk to the smart contract it's building on without human intervention. That's basically, it can call a function in that smart contract. It can do something with the initial smart contract, and that's what building on top of means. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you can redeem the ape, claim the ape coin, return the ape, all in the same trend. Like you can talk to them all in one transaction.
Like you kind of you click one button and the smart contracts start talking to each other back and forth and doing a thing to execute the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really interesting. Okay. We're getting there. Okay. So I want to just reiterate some of the features you spelled out, all that mostly that stem from this key unlock, this key technical unlock y'all have been working on. So you have the free shipping piece. I love the way you say that, where I as a lister could say, hey, I'll pay your gas fee. Do they get any say, like can they reject it if the gas is really high, or it's like you're taking the gamble as the lister?
I mean we would have to build that in because like at some point like there's a gas price high enough where like the lister would owe money,
like,
right?
Obviously not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you all worried about, or do you relish the idea that other marketplaces will copy this innovation?
I think we've been in crypto a while, and we've seen a lot of new entrants come in, and there are really no moats in crypto. So we don't know what's going to happen. We'll see. We'll see if anyone tries to imitate it. There's never a boring day in crypto. That's all I'll say. Rarible
is doing like kind of co-branded marketplaces or like white label marketplaces. I know they launched with MetaAngels, like a MetaAngels specific marketplace that's Rarible on the back end. I'm sure you guys saw that. Duncan, do you have thoughts on that? Do you have would you do anything similar? Give me your hot market take.
I mean, I always like to compare this to the internet, where it's a really valuable business to be Shopify and to power people's e-commerce stores, but it's even more powerful to be an Amazon business because everyone goes to Amazon.com and like while they're there they discover other stuff that they want to buy. So I think that both will happen. It's definitely something that we would explore. I mean, we really have our hands full like building the stuff that we've already decided that we want to build. So we're actively trying to take on fewer projects instead of more. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that we would consider in the future. And I honestly, I think it would be even more interesting with like a fully on-chain order book system, that lives on some other blockchain besides Ethereum, because on Ethereum it'd be cost prohibitive. But there could be a really cool future there where maybe every project has their own marketplace front end, but when you list something for sale, it automatically gets propagated to every other marketplace. I don't know. Now I'm just like thinking of ideas.
I love it. I love people thinking in real time on the show. That actually plays very well. Let's talk a little bit about the future to close out here. This is a question for both of you, but Griffin, why don't you start with it? A year from now, 5 years from now, where is Nifty Gateway? What is Nifty Gateway? Paint me the picture.
Good question. Well, I will say Nifty Gateway is less than 5 years old. Really, our current product is only about 2 years old. So predicting 5 years into the future feels really, really tricky, especially having been in crypto for as long as I have and seeing how much everything has changed in such a short period of time. But, I think our hope for Nifty Gateway, our mission has always been to get 1 billion people collecting NFTs. And we've done that by partnering with some of the world's best artists. We've done that by making it so easy that anyone can get started, like including my parents, and my grandma actually has some NFTs she bought on Nifty Gateway. And, now with this new product, like we're trying to expand to be the best self-custodial marketplace in the world. So, yeah, I think we just want to continue to build generation-defining products that are immensely useful to people. And, hopefully we can just do that and get closer to our mission of getting 1 billion people collecting NFTs. Because, that's what we all want. In Web3, we can all win together.
I thought that was a great answer. Yeah. No, honestly, I feel like when we first started out, we were way more confident about the future. And just spending a little bit of time in crypto, it's like you get way less confident about your ability to predict the future, because it's totally impossible. Like it's really hard to predict what's going to happen. We just try and stay focused on, like, as Griffin said, like building stuff that has value and makes people's lives better.
You said that to me. We spoke before this interview at one point, and you made a similar comment of just like, it's impossible to, I've stopped trying to predict. Do you have any memorable bad predictions? Like 2 years ago, we were like, this is probably what's going to happen, that now would seem funny that you can share? Duncan, I'll throw it back to you, since you just the one who said that.
Okay, it's not my prediction, but almost without exception, 3 years ago, whenever we would talk to someone and we'd explain to them what we were working on and what NFTs were, like the most common comment we got overwhelmingly was people would be like, okay, I don't really understand this whole like owning a digital item thing, but like, what if we used NFTs to like communicate ownership of a physical item instead of a digital item? And people, and we were just like, okay, it was a really frustrating comment, because I feel like at that point, like, there had already been a few people who tried it. Like, there's obviously all these issues with NFTs, and like people just didn't believe that digital ownership was really a thing. And so like, yeah, that wasn't my prediction, but that was everyone else. Oh, okay, actually,
it's also like possession is 9/10 of the law, or what? You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean prove
Right.
you own the physical item? Is it in your home? Like...
I know. Okay, I actually do have a terrible prediction I made.
Oh, good.
Which was this was the project I was working on before Nifty Gateway. It was just a side project. I never actually worked on it full time, but it was an NFT platform where the NFT essentially was like the token gated solution that would let you view the artwork that you were buying. So the whole idea was like, you couldn't view the artwork or download it unless you bought the NFT. And it was a terrible idea, because this, like, I don't know, in some ways, like, I was responding to the common criticism that people heard, which is like, I can just right click and save it.
Right.
But what we really quickly figured out is, people who collect NFTs, like they know the difference. Like, people who right click and save are just like not really very relevant. And then it's also impossible to stop people from downloading image files. Like, you really just can't do it. So that was a terrible
also
prediction.
Like half, if not more than half, the reason people buy NFTs is to socially signal. So if you're the only one who can see it. But I could see how in the really early days that makes sense. It also even has the utility component that, of course, is so in vogue now, or like being a part of a club component. So I see where you were on to. But yeah, that was a glad you went with the direction you've gone.
Yeah.
It's gone better.
We abandoned that idea pretty quickly. yeah,
Griffin,
fortunately.
what do you think about, and I know this whole topic is we can't predict anything, so I'm sorry, but the NFT use cases that we're all excited about when it comes to like my mortgage will be an NFT, or I think of some of these non-art examples of using smart contracts. Bullish, bearish?
Bullish, definitely bullish. I think, again, you saw this happen a lot with the internet. All the companies that were funded in the late 90s were like Webvan and Pets.com. And, Webvan was like, we'll deliver anything to you and you can order it over the web. And obviously that was a spectacular blow up. But now we have Instacart and DoorDash, which is the exact same thing. And we have Chewy. So all those ideas, I think it was pretty clear to everybody in the early days of the internet what the internet would do. Like if you read the literature from that time, most people were pretty much on the same page about what the internet would change. And they've basically been right. It just, what was really hard to predict was the timeline where that would actually happen and like how it would actually happen and which company would get the product that managed to get it just right and also get the strategic positioning to really dominate those categories. So yeah, with crypto, I think it's the same thing. Like everybody who hears about NFTs, they have the same ideas. They're like, let's tokenize every financial asset. Let's tokenize every mortgage, healthcare data, all that. And those ideas are no-brainers. And I think they will happen. It's just a question of when, like who and how. I think within 20 years, it'll happen.
I also, and I've probably said this on the show before, what I feel like I've started encountering is like the legal obstacles to it. I feel like it's a no-brainer that the tech will get there. It's like we have to get to a point where a judge accepts a smart contract in their courtroom, like, and that feels like a different kind of an obstacle to overcome. And it actually strikes me as the harder one than even the business or technical case. Okay. Last question, which we can cut if we're feeling like we need to, but it's 420. So I have this very silly question, which is your guys' last name is Cockfoster. That's right? Like how was middle school with that?
I mean, it's a pretty funny last name, and people like always think it's hilarious and made fun of us for it. I can always tell that. Okay, a lot of people. The funny part about this last name is like a lot of people think that we're making it up, and that they think that we're making some funny joke about
that you guys are like trolls.
Yeah, exactly. And so like a lot of people have that impression when they first meet us, which is like, yeah, it's kind of a funny experience. And then a lot of other people laugh, but like don't quite know what to say. Some people just like straight up refuse to say it, and like some middle school teachers and stuff, they would just refuse to pronounce our last name. I don't know. Okay, but it's actually great. It's very memorable, right? Like there's not many other Cockfosters in the world.
It's also funny because the name Cock it used to be a very common last name, like way back in the day. Like in the 16th century, Cock was like one of the most common last names in England, and then it became slang for something else. And now like most people who had that name have changed it a little bit. Like, the Koch brothers are these famous industrialists, but like that is someone who had the last name Koch at one point and then just moved to Germany, or they go by like Cox or something. And like there's all these like variations, and like you can see it's a history, and like we just like come from the people who stubbornly stuck with the name the entire time. And it's funny because the name Koch is from our dad's side, the name's Foster is from our mom's side, and they just pushed them together. They like combined them into a double last name, which is like people also don't understand that because it makes no sense. Like I don't know.
So that was literally my initial full question was like, is it really that one parent is Koch, one parent is Foster, and the Koch parent didn't just say like, I'll take your last name? Anyway, okay. Well, thank you for indulging me in this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I was curious, and also, it feels like an appropriate 420 conversation. If we weren't going to be high for this convo, or at least I'm not, we at least had to address this.
No, it's great. I'm just thinking about all the podcast hosts who are too scared to ask that question. So I'm really happy you asked it.
Come to Overpriced JPEGs where we'll get you the real scoop. We'll ask the hard-hitting questions that other journalists are afraid to ask. Okay. Awesome. Anything we missed? Final things we need to discuss here? Whether it's about products, just general thoughts you have about the space in general, and I'll let you guys go.
General thoughts. I mean, it's always been a lot more up and down than people know. When we first started in NFTs for a while, a lot of the other companies around us just quit and gave up, and people were like, oh, this NFT thing is not going to happen. So I don't know. I mean, the NFT market feels pretty bumpy right now. Definitely a lot of volatility. And yeah, I guess I would just say like, that's to be expected. That's just how it goes. And it's always been like that. So stick with it.
takes people stubborn enough to keep the last name Koch to make it for the last 5 years in NFTs. That is where we will end
that's the lesson. Yeah.
Great ending. Yeah.
Oh, truly, thank you guys both so much for joining. Yeah, I think I can't top that, so I'm going to leave it there.
Nice.
But we'll have to have you back on. I would love to track the ebbs and flows of this market with you guys. You can talk more Nifty Gateway, but also just talk broadly about the space. You guys obviously just know a lot, having been in it for as long as you have. And really appreciate you both coming on.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us, Carly.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, head over to Bankless HQ right now to develop your crypto investing skills and learn how to free yourself from banks and gain your financial independence. We recommend joining our daily newsletter, podcast, and community as a Bankless Premium subscriber to get the most out of your Bankless experience. You'll get access to our market analysis, our alpha leaks, and exclusive content, and even the Bankless token for airdrops, raffles, and unlocks. If you're interested in crypto, the Bankless community is where you want to be. Click the link in the description to become a Bankless Premium subscriber today. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for in-depth interviews with industry leaders, Ask Me Anythings, and weekly roll-ups where we summarize the week in crypto and other fantastic content. Thanks everyone for watching and being on the journey as we build out the Bankless Nation.